Our friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family.
Hello there, welcome back.
How many of you guys remember this game?
Loads of fun. We actually have that game here.
We do. Cindy and I, I had to get it just because it was like one of those things from childhood.
Yeah, and Mike is really good. He kicks butt. I'm really horrible. So he helps me. Thank gosh, he helps me so much.
Well, see, it's because, I don't like to watch her lose. So
he's a doll.
No, I want her to be happy. So, life is life a game. Do some beings view life as a game? Risk is all about conquering the world. How would you go about it? And before we get going into this, I just want to thank everybody again that has supported the channel through ordering through Medicinal Foods. There's a link at the top of every video, and it does give you a discount as well as support the channel. Do check them out. Just go check out some of their articles, because they're all about health and promoting consciousness. They're really good people that have been part of the family for probably about 4 years, or since the channel was early in its starting as Evolutionary Energy Arts. And do check out more about us at evolutionaryenergyarts.com. And if you need to set up an appointment for any sort of energy work, spiritual coaching, Vedic astrology charts, you could always send us an email at evolutionaryenergyarts@gmail.com or EEARTS@protonmail.com. And we do also want to thank those that are supporting us on Patreon and Ko-Fi, because we really couldn't do it without you guys.
Yes, thank you so much.
So we got some interesting info that came through from the guides as we were putting this together. We have some ex-Army generals fearing insurrection or civil war in 2024. Well, 2024, major year. And reality, if you guys remember, we were talking about a Pluto return, which is going to be highlighted in 2022, well, now, basically. 2022, 2023 is going to have a lot of energies all about the Pluto return. What's a Pluto return? Well, the Pluto return is the first time that Pluto's back in the same position from where it was when the country was founded, back there in 1776. And it remakes things. It rebrands, remakes, redoes. When we have Pluto returns throughout history, you see like empires fall. You see major changes, breakups of countries and empires, and things being totally redone. And this is falling right in the midst of the two eclipses, the one that came in August of 2017, the other that is coming in April of 2024. And X marks the spot right at the, heart of the country at the, New Madrid fault. There's so much going on as far as symbology, and then there's so much going on, period. This is a wild roller coaster of a ride here that we are on right now. So you have 3 retired U.S. Army generals that are warning of insurrection or even civil war. If the results of what happens in the next cycle, and you know what we mean, that thing that comes by every 4 years.
Yes, that 4-year marker where everything is supposedly supposed to change, but really it doesn't. They just move around the labels a little bit.
They move around, the chess pieces. They move around the pieces on the risk board, so to speak. Well, they're urging today's leaders to act to prevent such scenes, calling on today's leaders to actually war game an attempted coup. Ooh, well, I mean, there's so much to cover in this, and we started off in one direction, ended up in a totally different direction I didn't expect to go on this video. But if we look to what some of the founding fathers, and we could just do this real quick. Thomas Jefferson, for instance, and talking about the Second Amendment, and the need, for limited government, government not to overreach itself, and such things as the democracy will cease to exist when you take away from those who are willing to work and give to those who would not. And the beauty of the Second Amendment is that it will not be needed until they try to take it. It goes on and on. Just, he was one that really warned about exactly what we see happening right now before our very eyes. And you see this quote right here: the two enemies of the people are criminals and government. So let us tie the second down with the chains of the Constitution, so the second will not become the legalized version of the first. Again, when a government no longer works for the people, of the people, and is truly by the people, then what is it if not just straight up tyranny? And so here we have three retired major generals. We have Paul D. Eaton, Antonio M. Taguba, and Brigadier General Stephen M. Anderson. These three brought this up, and actually talking about wargaming for the insurrection possibly to come, and to identify weak spots and deal with them. It's just, and I got a couple links so you could see, that this is a hot topic, and a lot of people can see what's coming. I got some background info on these people too, which we won't go into, great depth, but I just wanted to give you so we could say, learn more about, who is this that's saying this and their background. Again, when you become a part of the system and have been part of the system for a long career, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, obviously that's entrenchment. We've talked about how dangerous it is to have members of Congress, like senators that are in there for 20 years or more. And this is what happened in the Roman Empire as well, as they were kind of born into it. It became almost like a family thing often, handing on down the power to others in the same families, others in the same bloodlines. It's a New Yorker article about Taguba, who had to investigate some atrocities that you might be familiar with in Abu Ghraib. It was really an ugly time, but there's so many ugly times. We're in an ugly time right now. And this is info on the Brigadier General Steve Anderson, Chief Marketing Officer. Interesting as well. Well, it's all about sales. Is not politics totally about sales when you get down to it?
Oh, you have to convince people that you got the best idea.
Absolutely, absolutely. We should really pay very close attention when we hear things like this. And then we go to those DEA-GEL numbers. And really wonder how this think tank, DEAGL.com, who removed the numbers now, although we do have some screenshots of them in various places, and others do too. How they were trying to, how could they rationalize the United States with a population currently, over 300 and I think about 34 million people. In 2025, how do they rationalize that there'll be like 99 million people in the United States and everybody else, I guess, just packed up and left for greater economic opportunity?
Yeah, they just went to visit mom in another part of the planet.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to make much sense there, Yeah, there's an economic crash coming. We could see the writing on the wall. Mm-hmm. So, do you think that 2 to 3 out of every 4 people is going to pack up and move in the next couple of years?
Right, I know. So what exactly is going to happen to these people? You got to ask yourself these questions.
And then when you look at all the nations of the world and you see that, China and Russia and India gains people, China and Russia stay about the same. A lot of Latin American countries actually gain people according to what they were showing. But the United States loses, over 230 million people to just pack up and leave. It's curious too, because all the NATO nations, lose significant portions of their population, major portions. They have the UK going from, I believe it was 66 million to 15, something like that. It was crazy. The numbers there. It's just, how could they come up with this? Well, I think we could see that there looks to be two things on the horizon here that seem to be brewing, these dark clouds of WAR. As you see, Russia demands Ukraine and ex-Soviet nations be barred from NATO. So Moscow sets out in tough terms, draft security documents submitted to the US and allies, basically saying, obviously, the Ukraine, which is right next door with a large border, it's just an impossibility for them to accept. And yet we've seen a lot of troop movement, and now we see that the White House may redirect military equipment to the Ukraine. The administration of JB number 46, the one with the glowing dark coal eyes, is mulling a plan that would redirect helicopters and other military equipment that was once going to go to the Afghanistan area, to the Ukraine. That's something that could definitely irritate the big bear that's there.
Yep.
7 signs that war with Russia even got closer. And then, of course, we have the whole Taiwan thing and, the whole everything going on with China as a whole, as China is now actually asserting itself in so many ways. And, it's true. It says that sadly most Americans simply do not care about the Ukraine. Most people wouldn't give second thought of the Ukraine unless they have, relatives that come from there or they came from there themselves. I've had friends throughout my life that have come from the Ukraine. But it's not one of those areas that we would necessarily think of, but it could be the trigger point. It's so hard to put your finger on what's going to be the trigger point. We really don't know. It could be Iran. It could be Venezuela still. It could be Cuba. There's just so many hotspots right now. It's hard to pick one. And when we understand that Ukraine has a massive border with Russia, and the Ukraine is a breadbasket. It's one of the top, producing areas on the globe as far as food production. And we see to the Russians, really, this is the biggest crisis since the Cuban Missile Crisis, where Russia put missiles in Cuba 90 miles away from Florida shores. Well, it's the exact same thing, basically, with military hardware in Ukraine, which has a massive border with Russia. And they've said this is their red line. So you can see, despite the fact that Vladimir Putin has said that such a move would cross one of his red lines, Ukraine was just told it will eventually be allowed to join NATO. So, that means that's just like somebody had made a comment the other day saying it's just like all of a sudden Mexico going into an alliance with Russia and China. Would not we in the United States be maybe a little bit apprehensive about that?
A wee bit.
Ukraine has shocked the world by opening up bomb shelters now in Kiev. Yes, that's a big move. And ABC's Martha Raddatz is reporting that after JB's recent call with Putin, the Russians moved an additional 10,000 troops to the border. The EU is warning of massive costs for Russia if there's any more aggression towards Ukraine. Banks in Belarus are preparing to switch to Russia's version of SWIFT. And, for years, all this was being set up with BRICS. That's that economic group of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, which expanded. It was all about creating an alternative. And now we see that the economic entanglement between US and NATO and China and Russia and some other nations is becoming disentangled, so that there literally could be a conflict, as the entanglement itself makes it tough to have a conflict. And we have it being reported that Russia has begun to move toward short-range surface-to-air missiles to the border area with Ukraine. Number 7, a bipartisan group of U.S. senators wants to formally designate Russia as a terrorist state. So we can see, it is getting much more likely. And of course it would be global. And of course it would be insanity.
Mm-hmm. Very much so.
There's so much insanity in this world right now. As we see, you have thousands marching in New Zealand's capital to protest against the dates for men, even though they've hit the 90% mark in this country. This has to be one of the very, very tops. I know, I think Israel leads the way. Wow. What is going on in this world? What is going on in this world? Well, again, we could just go back to Genesis, go back to that Tower of Babel. Look, mankind is united. We can't have this. They cannot be united. Come, let us go down there and let us set them against one against another. Let's confound their languages, get them fighting nonstop wars. This is what we have. Divide and conquer. Do it from the sidelines where nobody realizes you're even there.
Right. That's the most important thing, is certain beings have to stay out of sight. And, as we were putting this video together, and I'm just sort of looking up in space like I do, I get this video start coming about these two characters, and how they're very, very good at what they do in setting these things up. And, it's just so wrong, but that's what they're doing. That's exactly what they're doing.
And so we talk about power structures. People will talk about the Cabal, the DS, DEEP, STATE, and we'll even talk about the ill you, men hati.
Yes, be very careful.
All these groups, this, and we could go into, the religious sides of things, the Negra Papa, the Black Pope, all these groups, yeah, they're secondary. I mean, the highest human on the planet equates to nothing more than a drill sergeant. Right. When you get down to it. And that's the perception that people got to get through their heads. And there was a video out with number 2. Who does number 2 work for? Who? Well, she works with, the ancestors of these guys and the ones that work under these guys, as does number 1. And, when we're looking at the stories, like there is a African nation, African tribe, and I don't think it was the Zulu. I'm trying to remember which one it was. We talked about the moon being put in place, and how certain indigenous people, like the Etruscans, remember a time before the moon. They do. They have legends of it. And this one African tribe says that it was 2 warring brothers that put the moon in its place, and it caused a great cataclysm, and it changed the planet. Even gave us our tilt that we have, that 23.5 degrees that Western astrology ignores.
Yeah.
And Vedic astrology doesn't. Well, yeah, Enlil and Enki, these are the ones we're talking about, and we have shared that they are technically, on a golf course in Florida, retired. I'm just kidding about the golf course in Florida thing, but they are retired, so to speak. They're not actively leading, the Anunnaki peoples. And again, it's the Gigi, the ones that rebelled against the Anunnaki, that have been the ones that truly have been controlling the planet here on Earth. And when we see these families that we talk about, the Red Shields, the ROTHS Childs, and others, like the Rocky Fellers, and don't forget that some of the bloodlines of these families include Kennedy and Onassis and many, many others. They're really offspring. They have bloodline that ties into the Gigi. Now, the Anunnaki themselves are 4D beings. These are 4D beings. So where we are in a dream state, that's their basic, normal state of being. They're a fourth density person, so they need the 3D GG to handle things in a physical sense here on Earth. Which has been the case, and it has been going on for a long time. When we see in the Mahabharata, the wars amongst the gods, this is what we're talking about. This is in a GG Anunnaki Draco, ultimately black AI dragon archonic takeover of the planet, which happens periodically. The dark forces periodically do take us over, so to speak, take control when we're at a very, very low point in the Kali Yuga. And then we rise back up. And by the way, when we rise back up, going on our way back up towards 5D, and not every individual goes through all these incarnations, there's always the possibility for individual souls to ascend. It's just the way it is. Individuals can always come to understandings, achieve ascension on an individual basis. But as we come back up, there's going to be a point in time when these guys are going to look very physical to us again, and we're heading into that time zone, and many are waiting to see Nibiru pop out in the sky. It's been where it is, basically. I know that Sitchin, and they can move it, and it's more of a ship now than a planet. It's very much like Darth Vader. It's organic, but it's on life support because they've done what they've done to it.
Well, that's the level of control that they desire. That's the level of control that they want to take. And we're the ones who are just sitting here giving away our natural abilities, giving away our freedom through all of these different devices that they give us in the name of making things easier.
Yeah, and there may come a day where you actually see Anunnaki, broadcasts to you.
Mm-hmm.
Because we have one foot in 3D, the other foot is in the air about to land in 4D. And, beings, there are beings, and I've seen one firsthand, be very, very, well, it looked like it's on the same density as me, a tall gray once in 2017 when it was trying to sabotage me. I woke up and caught it doing that, and then it looked away from me immediately and went into a meditative state and slowly just kind of turned into a shape of energy, and then it was gone. It just basically changed its vibrational frequency through will and meditative technique, basically, and went up to 4D. And sometimes these beings can come down to 3D. Now, these are not, the Anunnaki are not all the gods. That's one of the things. And again, that term God and gods, we really would be better served if we started using other terminology, just like lumping everything into angels and demons. And when the original word demon comes from daemon, which means a benevolent nature spirit, but everything has been twisted by this, this structure, which is the structure that views us as nothing but slaves. So when you're using their terminology and not distinguishing between these beings, we're really doing a disservice, because you're believing their programming, and you're limiting yourself with your ability to perceive things for how they really, really are, which, again, these are just beings. These are just beings that take advantage of humanity, and have been, and they take advantage of the whole planet and other planets. As we saw in the last couple of days, there was a discovery of vast reservoirs of water currently under the surface of Mars. Vast reservoirs, and a canyon many times the size of the Grand Canyon that appears to be filled with water.
Mm-hmm.
There's still life on Mars. There always has been. They're still basically raping the planet there, as they are raping the planet Earth. So why do we bring up Enlil and Enki? Well, in retirement, people play games.
Yes, they do.
They play games. They love to play war games. This whole system we get comes from them. When you look to the Roman Empire, and every empire that's come after that, that's been basically global in nature, even the current one, it's all based on their concepts. They're the ones that taught mankind this type of thing. And yet in the golden age, we have benevolent beings like the guides that we have talked about that are here openly teaching us, more benevolent things, how to get along. What is consciousness? What is a Merkaba? How do we develop a Merkaba? How do we develop a light body? How do we, activate our Kundalini? How do we become fully multidimensional in function as well? I mean, they teach us all these benevolent things, the benevolent ones. But the ones that have been in control, that have given us our belief systems for the majority of the people on the planet, through the extermination of the indigenous people, which are holding on to their traditional beliefs, which extend back up to the golden age, well, they're exterminated and replaced with the mindset of the slave masters.
It's just the way it is, and the quicker we understand this as a collective, then we know what's at stake. We know how important it is to take our power back, to take our freedoms back, to take our sovereignty back.
They're not the creators of man. Again, source is within all of us. So no, they modify the vehicles that are on this planet for the soul to inhabit. They modify the vehicles on a regular basis whenever they're able to. And do they upgrade? Hell no. They're downgrading. They're constantly downgrading so that we will not be as powerful as they. We will not catch on to what they're doing. They're constantly clouding our minds. They're constantly distorting things and twisting truths. Yeah, they're most definitely not our fathers in any way, shape, or form. All they've done is basically modify the vehicle that's on the planet for the souls to inhabit. And they keep limiting it more and more. And so they have in mind right now, they are creating a new version of that will be less powerful than the one that comes before it, as they're constantly downgrading.
Right, less powerful, more controllable.
Exactly, more controllable. Hence your zombie apocalypse, so to speak. Because what is humanity to become? Well, kind of what they envision is, again, a Borg, an assimilation. They are, again, if we look to the small grays, that are in many cases as much machine as they are biomass, and they seem to almost be kind of soulless. Well, this is their ideal. This is what they want.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And they control the puppets that are on this planet. They're the power behind the apparent power structure on the planet. Do you think that they have your well-being in mind? Think about it. Every time you invoke certain energies, every time you give your power away by telling them, your will be done, not mine, you're just falling straight into their plan. They want you to give your power away. They want you to vote for the system. A vote for any of their candidates is a vote for the system. It's saying, you're giving it your stamp of approval. You're choosing. You're choosing to partake in the system. This is how we are tricked.
It is, and it's really unfortunate. But it's true, and we have to look at it as us together and realize the truth together. And the more we can do this together as a team, the more we're going to push these entities back and take our own freedom. I think that's just the most important thing, because look at what's happening. I used this analogy a couple days ago. They're squeezing us like a snake squeezes a rat. Do you think they're going to let up?
Absolutely not. And recognize that they truly, they might have more technology than we do, but they're not more advanced than us. In many ways, we should feel pity for them, because they're stuck. They're absolutely stuck. They cannot reach where we can reach because of their choices. And of course, they've accumulated a lot of negative karma. Yes, they do live extremely long lives, but again, the soul is eternal, so it's just a vehicle. Again, the body's a vehicle, and the soul goes on forever. But these two guys, what's happening here is they're just playing games. This is a game to them. It's nothing but a game to them. This is what they enjoy. The pain, the suffering of war is just something they enjoy. So when we see these headlines and we see where we're heading, we can understand that, to them, in many ways, this is just, them enjoying themselves. You were getting that they literally teach these people. Ultimately, they're teaching them how to carry out war.
Oh, for sure. They're in charge. They teach them, everything that they want to know, and the ideas are out there for whoever wishes to partake in them.
Yeah. So again, why do we glorify certain things? Why do we put people on pedestals? Why do we have a military history fandom wiki? It's why ask why? It's all glorification. And when you go throughout history and you start realizing there's never been a time when there's not war. War is a constant. It's always happening. There's always somebody's ego that wants to conquer the world, that these beings are whispering in their ear and basically fanning the fires of what they view to be glorious when it's really atrocious. It's the system. It's their system. It's their system. And yeah, we are closer to that third conflagration that we have to be so careful about trying to avoid as much as possible. How are we going to do this? The only way all this is going to stop is with the puppets no longer in power.
Right.
That's the only way.
Yeah, it's like, removing everything from the puppet. Everybody just has to back out and retreat, and then that puppet collapses, and they don't have any power.
Absolutely. So again, guys, as always, stay prepared. Keep throwing out the positive vibes, even though, most definitely we are in trying times. Work on yourself. Work on the spiritual practice. That is so, so important. Can't go stress that enough. It's impossible to stress that enough. If people paid the proper attention to a spiritual practice, we wouldn't have people so easily controlled.
That's true. That's so true.
Again, as always, God bless. Namaste.
Namaste.